Come to order. Pursuant to notice issued on March 22nd, 2023, the committee is meeting to consider 24 legislative measures. I note the presence of a quorum. But before we move to our agenda, I just want to take a few moments to address what is an absolutely terrible event that occurred over the weekend. One of our committee staff members was violently attacked and seriously injured. And I'm certainly horrified, and I'm sure everyone on this committee is horrified by this senseless crime and hope the perpetrator is swiftly brought to justice. I'm glad to hear that Philip is recovering. He and his family are in my thoughts and in my prayers today and in the days ahead. And my staff and I wish him the best as he focuses on his recovery. And I just want to take a few moments to acknowledge Philip and Senator Ranking Member Paul and your entire staff, Ranking Member. I know this has been a tough few days for you. And I know that, that our thoughts will continue to be with you. I know that some of our members have to leave to attend other committee meetings. This is a very busy time for everybody, so we'll proceed to consideration of legislation. And I would hope members could wait till afterwards to make any statements regarding bills. But at this time, I'd like to recognize Ranking Member Paul for any opening remarks.
For most of the bills that we are considering today, there isn't a lot of disagreement over what we're doing. I appreciate that we've been able to make some meaningful changes on a few of the bills and that many will be able to pass by voice vote. I also appreciate the efforts to find a path forward on my Duplication Scoring Act. Unfortunately, for several bills, we have not been able to reach an agreement on how to accomplish their goals in a responsible manner. For too long, Congress has said yes to every good-sounding idea and often made those programs permanent. It's partly why we have a $6 trillion debt or $6 trillion budget this year, and our debt will exceed $32 trillion. This excessive spending has led to the inflation that families across America are facing every day. In order to let these bills move forward, I proposed two simple reforms to bills that would cost new money: add a sunset and pay for them using existing authority. Both of these things have been championed by the majority in the past, and the chairman has indicated to us in meetings that he's not opposed to sunsets. I thought we were there on that, but then as our negotiations have gone forward, we have not gotten to where we can agree to the sunsets. I think sunsetting these things forces Congress to make sure programs are delivering their value, and you come back and reevaluate them after a couple years and make sure they're doing. We just add program after program, and some of them sound good, and the title sounds good. I mean, Mother Teresa was here. She'd be for most of these things, you know, but we still should sunset them and rediscuss in 2 years whether they worked, see if there's some other program that's doing exactly the same thing, whether it's duplicative. But anyway, I proposed adding a 2-year sunset to most of the bills and that we thought required it. The majority staff has said that that was too short. We said how much, and we really haven't gotten to an agreement, I think, on about 6 or 7 bills. And so those will be offering amendments to add what we talked about in advance sunsets and trying to use existing funds rather than create new mandates or unfunded mandates for the agency. We've offered several versions of language that's previously been used by Democrat members of this committee to cover the cost of these bills. So what we've done is taken exact wording from Democrat-passed bills and inserted that. There's been some discussion, well, the Appropriation Committee doesn't like that wording. Well, we took the wording from Democrat-passed bills in the last year. I still hope we can find a quicker way through. If we wanted to do a much quicker way through, we could simply pass on the 6 or 8 bills where we haven't agreed to sunset them and see if we could come to an agreement. We wouldn't have to waste too much time on those bills today. But if we do the bills that don't have the sunsets and don't have any kind of provision for how they're paid for, I don't think it's that unreasonable just to have those amendment votes.
Very good. We will now proceed to consideration of bills. Unfortunately, we will, and I apologize to members in advance, we will have to have roll calls on all of these bills. We had we're used to dealing in a UC, unanimous consent. We did that last meeting. We had an objection raised, and according to the parliamentarian, if an objection is raised, even after the fact, of a bill that's passed unanimously by a voice vote, it can't move forward to the floor, and so it requires lots of gymnastics to try to move it forward. So in order to prevent that and to make sure that the will of every member is clearly expressed, we'll have to have roll calls this point forward in the committee for everything that we do. I wish that wasn't the case, but given a recent incident, we're going to have to do that. I will talk about the amendments if ranking member offers these when they come up, but we'll proceed to the consideration of S-670. Does any member wish to offer an amendment? Ranking member Paul.
This bill is writing two new programs and has a worthy purpose, but my concern is that the bill makes these brand-new programs permanent and doesn't use existing funds to pay for it. We've had a long-standing principle: when we create something new, we try to find some money to pay for it. We actually have pay-as-you-go type of rules that are supposed to try to make it such that new programs don't come into being without taking the money from somewhere else. We hardly ever obey our own rules, but I think it would be a good idea to try to start even on smaller bills like this. We should want to review them in a few years to make sure they're working and that they aren't duplicating some other programs. My amendment would sunset the bill in 2 years and ensure DHS uses existing funds to pay for it.
So I oppose the Paul amendment, and first let me talk about sunsets, and we are happy to consider sunsets on bills, particularly for new programs. 2-year sunsets proposed in this amendment offered by Ranking Member Paul today were considered by my staff. They're found to be unworkable. In many cases, 2 years is just simply too short to really fully evaluate the effectiveness of some programs. However, as I expressed to the ranking member, I believe sunsets are appropriate and important for certain new programs and should be tailored to address the needs of those individual programs. The program that we have here before us, the Impact and Victim Assistance Programs, are pre-existing DHS programs to counter human trafficking and to protect victims. They've been in effect for quite some time. Including a sunset would potentially eliminate these programs that have proven effective and essential by experts all across the field who deal with victims of trafficking. And I just want, for the record, for the members in the committee, we have bills already on this markup that include sunsets. I'm not opposed to sunsets. I think they make sense, as I mentioned. The following 7 bills on this markup already include sunsets: the Smart Leasing Act, the Report Act, Proving Digital Identity Act, the Federal Data Center Enhancement Act, the Bolivar Act, the CPAT Pilot Program Act, and 2 pilot programs that are in the Open Source Software Act that I'm working on with Senator Hawley are already in there. And I'm certainly willing to continue discussions on sunsets for appropriate individual programs. I just think a blanket approach doesn't make sense for the committee's tradition of advancing bipartisanship and trying to be very thoughtful about these, but we'll continue to work with that. The other item is about the required dollars designated by with appropriations. Unfortunately, our appropriations committee will object to that, and these are basically going to be, this would be considered a poison pill amendment as it reads right now, because it would basically, we would be taking money from another program to be spent on this bill, which would infringe on the jurisdiction of the Appropriations Committee. We can't appropriate, we can authorize, but we can't appropriate. Those kinds of actions would be best on the Appropriations Committee, which is the way to deal with that. And there, Senator Paul mentioned there were some other language. We're going to continue to work on the language because I understand the thrust of what you want to do, and we're going to try to figure if we can get to that point to make that happen. And I know that, you know, we'd like to advance this out of the committee now. We know that a lot of these bills will only move with unanimous consent, so we'll have to find a resolution to this to move them forward, and we want to work closely with you to make that happen. I would just hope we could move the process forward. I will say, I know in the amendments you have language directing the GAO to provide a report to evaluate these programs. I think that makes sense. We're happy to take that part because we certainly want to evaluate it. So for this amendment, and I think this is probably similar to other amendments that will be offered on other bills, I don't support these amendments as written. I would urge my colleagues to vote no, but understand that we are serious about trying to get a resolution. Senator Paul.
I have a question. If 2 years is too short, what would be acceptable on the sunset for this bill?
Well, I think let's talk about it, but 10 years, somewhere in that range. But it depends on the bill. This bill is an existing program. We would be concerned about this one, who has already proven its success. That would be a problem. So,
My understanding that this is a program that will be newly codified. This is not codified currently in law.
that's true. It's codified.
Yeah.
But it's been
There's
in
some
place for some
there's
time.
some debate over that. But anyway, I guess my point is that you're right. You can pass it today, and then I'll object on the floor. And so we can do it, but I'm going to object unless there's a debate and a compromise on the sunsetting of this. On the use of existing funds, if we punt that to the Appropriations Committee and say, oh, we're only going to do what they tell us to do, we sort of abdicate our authority. Essentially, the way the system works is if we pass this, none of them are going to vote against this. You think anybody votes against this? They're going to vote for it, it'll pass on the floor, and then they'll do what they jolly well want in appropriations, and they'll ignore the instructions, basically. Because unfortunately, the authorizing bills don't bind the appropriation committees, and so they kind of do what they want anyway. But the language we're asking to use is actually language from bills of yours, but your personal bills that have passed that have limiting language in them. So I don't think we're asking for something extraordinary or something that's unacceptable, because last year it was acceptable for your bills to have this language in it. We took it from several bills that were either yours personally or other Democrat-passed bills that had language limiting it to money that was already expended.
Well, and I understand that, and I understand that unfortunately, the appropriators now have different versions. So we still have to work with them to get the language. Clearly, I'm open to that because we did it in the past, things that were similar to this, and we're going to do it. These are only going to pass with UC, so as you know, someone can put a hold on, and appropriators can put a hold on this unless we try to find some sort of compromise. But the intent of what you're trying to do, I understand, and we were going to find ways to work with you, but we just want to move them so the process keeps moving. This is already a snail pace world that we live in the Senate. We would like to try to keep moving this forward because it is important. These are bills that passed unanimously without any opposition last year. I was hoping this would be a fairly easy markup as one that passed unanimously with no opposition last term. So with that, if we could move forward here, if there's no further debate on the amendment, the question is on its adoption. All those in favor will say aye. All those in favor will say aye for the amendment.
Aye.
All opposed will say nay. Nay. Majority of members having voted in the negative, the nays have it. The amendment is not agreed to. The Paul Amendment 1 is not adopted. If there's no further debate or amendment, the question is on final passage of 670. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan. Aye. Senator Sinema. Aye. Senator Rosen. Aye. Senator Padilla. Aye. Senator Ossoff. Aye. Senator Blumenthal. Aye. Senator Paul.
Aye.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Aye. Senator Romney. Aye. Senator Scott. Aye. Senator Hawley. Aye. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0. On the vote by proxy, and for the record only, the yeas are 3, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
We'll now proceed to consideration of S-264. If there's no, is there anyone who wishes to offer an amendment or debate? Seeing none, the question is on final passage of S-264. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan. Aye. Senator Sinema. Aye. Senator Rosen. Aye. Senator Padilla. Aye. Senator Ossoff. Aye. Senator Blumenthal. Aye. Senator Paul.
Aye.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Aye. Senator Romney. Aye. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Aye. Senator Marshall. Senator Marshall. No instruction.
I didn't have anything on that one.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0. On this vote, the vote by proxy, for the record only, the yeas are 2, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
We'll now proceed to consideration of S-211. I ask unanimous consent that the committee consider the Peters substitute amendment to S-211 as the underlying bill. Seeing no objection, considered adopted. Does any member wish to offer an amendment?
We're doing 211 right now.
Yes.
My question is, did we include in the text of the bill, has the text of the bill been changed, or is it still the
Yeah, I think
original?
we accepted your,
So it's in.
Yeah, we accepted your,
All right.
right?
The substitute is accepted.
Which includes Senator Paul's language, right? Yes, yeah. We're good. We're all set.
Yep.
Okay.
If there's no further debate on the, oh, sorry, Senator
I want to
Scott.
call up Johnson Amendment number 1 is modified.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
We'll now proceed to consideration of Johnson 1 amendment to S211 as modified. Senator Scott?
So the amendment ensures that the government does not enter into leases with people or businesses that would use the lease for activities that we do not want happening in federal buildings. This includes illegal activities, political lobbying. Amendment also makes sure we do not lease to foreign governments and political organizations or campaigns. The amendment also prevents political favoritism by not allowing a contractor or grantee to enter into a lease with a federal agency that gave them the contract or grant. Senator Johnson says these are common sense guardrails. He wants to thank Chairman Peters, Ranking Member Paul, and the members of the committee for their support.
Thank you, Senator Scott. And I also want to thank Senator Johnson for his amendment and for working with me to tailor the lease restrictions in the amendment appropriately. And I support the Johnson amendment as modified, which sets restrictions on who may participate in the leasing pilot to prevent impropriety and conflicts of interest. If there's no further debate on the amendment, the question's on its adoption. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, the amendment is agreed to. Senator Padilla wishes to be recorded as a no. The Johnson one is adopted as modified. If there's no further debate or amendment, the question is on final passage of S211 as modified by the Peters substitute amendment and Johnson amendment number 1 as modified. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan. Senator Sinema. Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul.
Yes.
Aye. Aye.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott.
Aye.
Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Senator Marshall.
Did you have Marshall? Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0. On the vote by proxy, and for the record, only the yeas are 3, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
We will now proceed to consideration of S709. Does any member wish to offer an amendment?
So we're on 709.
Correct. Do you have an amendment?
I think we do, but are we amending someone else's?
No, it's our, so Paul amendment, the second reader on amendment, we agreed to the GAO report, right? Right. It's just. Yes, so it's just the GAO report that we agreed to.
Okay, so the GAOs, so we have, what? We have agreed to it, and we still need a second degree, or we? Okay. My amendment 1 is modified. I originally proposed an amendment adding a sunset to this bill as well as having a GAO report. I have agreed to modify my amendment to just contain the GAO report and understand you will support that amendment. I look at this bill as one where we've had a useful dialogue. We listened to your arguments that a sunset would not be needed and decided to stand down. And on this, we'll be happy if we can just get the report.
Thank you, Senator Paula, and I support the second degree amendment. If there's no further debate on the amendment, the question's on its adoption. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Majority of members present having voted in the affirmative. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The Paul amendment is adopted. If there's no further debate, the question is on final passage of S709. Clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan. Senator Sinema. Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul. Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott.
Aye.
Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye, and just want to be clear, this amendment or this vote was on final passage of S709 as modified by Paul number 1. Paul second degree amendment to amendment number 1.
Yes.
Is that correct from our parliamentarian?
This was on final passage of 709 as amended by Paul Amendment 1 as modified.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Any objection? That is what everyone voted on. Seeing no objection, the bill is
On the
adopted.
vote of those present, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0. On the vote by proxy and for the record only, the yeas are 3, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
Great, thank you. We will now proceed to consideration of S717. If there's no further debate, the questions on final passage of 717, the clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan. Senator Sinema. Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul. Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott.
Aye.
Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0. On the vote by proxy and for the record only, the yeas are 3, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
We will now proceed to consideration of S917. Does any member wish to offer an amendment? Senator Paul?
Speak against the bill unless someone else has an amendment.
We see no amendment offered. Would you like to?
The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, seems to be at the center of every new revelation about efforts to censor disfavored speech. Rather than giving them more power, we should be investigating what they have been doing and limiting their power. I'm also concerned that this bill will create federal regulation of open source software and kill a thriving area of innovation. I'm going to oppose this bill today and hope we can keep talking about how to accomplish the goal of increasing the security of this software.
Very good. We will continue to work with your ranking member, Paul, as we move this bill forward. If there's no further debate or amendment, the question is on final passage of S917. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan. Senator Sinema. Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul.
No.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott.
Aye.
Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 11, the nays are 1. On this vote by proxy and for the record only, the yeas are 3, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 11, the nays are 1, and the motion is agreed to.
We will now proceed to consideration of S945. Does any member wish to offer an amendment? Senator Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I offer Hassan Amendment 1, which strengthens language to ensure that all members of Congress have access to both unclassified and classified reports created under this act, and makes additional changes to address concerns of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence.
Senator Paul.
I'd like to offer a second-degree amendment.
Senator Paul, you're recognized for your second-degree amendment.
This amendment would require that no additional funds are authorized for the purpose of carrying out this bill. By not authorizing additional funds, my amendment requires federal agencies to optimize the use of their existing resources to carry out the provisions of the bill. This amendment holds the federal government accountable by reinforcing that resources are finite.
Just that I respectfully oppose the second-degree amendment, and Senator Peters, if you have additional comments.
Yeah, this deals with appropriation language that we need to sort through, and we're happy to try to do that going forward, but I would urge members to vote no, and then allow us to sort through an amendment that will work for all parties and get agreement that we can move this legislation forward. So if there's no further debate on the amendment, the question's on its adoption. All those in favor will say,
You have to vote on the second-degree amendment. Is he asking?
okay, can I do that?
Yeah, I have to do the second-degree amendment.
Is there, what do I say different? There's no further debate on the Paul second-degree amendment. The question is on its adoption. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed will say nay. Nay. Majority of members having voted in the negative, the Paul second-degree amendment is not agreed to. Okay, now we do that. So now we move to the original Hassan Amendment number 1. If there's no further debate, the question's on its adoption. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. We can now, there's no other amendment. If there's no further debate or amendment, the question's now on final passage of S 945 as modified by Hassan Amendment number 1. Clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan. Aye. Senator Sinema. Aye. Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Aye. Senator Ossoff. Aye. Senator Blumenthal. Aye. Senator Paul.
Aye.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford.
Aye.
Senator Romney. Aye. Senator Scott. Aye. Senator Hawley. Aye. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0. On the vote by proxy, and for the record only, the yeas are 3, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
We'll now proceed to consideration of S 666. If there's no further debate, the question's on final passage of S 666. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Oh, aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan. Senator Sinema. Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul.
Aye.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0. On the vote by proxy, and for the record only, the yeas are 3, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
Maggie, if you'd got it 5 minutes earlier, it could have been 665.
I know. I'll blame it on my co-sponsor.
So now we'll proceed with the consideration of S 824. Does any member wish to offer an amendment? Senator Paul.
My amendment would narrow the bill to the provisions requiring the president to submit a national critical infrastructure resilience strategy. This amendment is intended to address concerns about CISA's demonstrated weaponization of information against America's free speech rights by striking the provisions that would allow them to accumulate more data and information from the private sector. This change helps ensure that the privacy of individuals and organizations is protected and that information is not used inappropriately by CISA.
Senator Hassan.
Mr. Chair, I oppose Senator Paul's amendment. The National Risk Management Act is a bipartisan bill based on a bipartisan recommendation from the Cyberspace Solarium Commission, and I want to thank Senator Romney for co-sponsoring this bill with me. The bill codifies the Solarium Commission's recommendation that the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, conduct a risk assessment of all sectors of critical infrastructure and develop a strategy for government to work with industry to protect critical infrastructure. As the Solarium Commission noted, it's important that CISA periodically receive information and update its risk assessments and the strategy for mitigating these evolving risks. This bill provides a transparent process for CISA to accept information from all stakeholders, and it allows, but does not require, industry owners and operators to submit additional information that they believe CISA should consider. We'd be doing our communities a disservice to force them to rely on old, outdated assessments and strategies. For that reason, I urge my colleagues to oppose Senator Paul's amendment. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Romney.
I'd add my support to Senator Hassan's comments, which is this is basically saying that we'd like to have an assessment of our cyber risks to critical infrastructure. We're talking about power grids, pipelines, our defense industrial base, our water systems, transportation systems. So it's making an assessment on an every 5-year basis of how vulnerable we are. The data we're collecting is all done voluntarily. Is this saying to the private enterprises, if you would like to provide this information so that we can learn from one another and share the risks and vulnerabilities, we can do so. I think it's pretty clear looking around the world that there are adversaries that would like to potentially interfere with our critical infrastructure and use that as a weapon, potentially a very dangerous weapon that would put us on our knees. So we need this information. I believe that companies will be happy to provide this because it's going to be in their interest. But again, it's voluntary. This is not required. It's voluntary. And those that oppose this amendment say, well, but there might be, pressure from the public that why aren't you providing this information? My goodness, companies can stand up to opinions in the public, and they have to do what they believe is in the best interest of their enterprise and in the safety of our infrastructure. So we really should not adopt this amendment and instead put in place the requirement to have CISA carry out this assessment on every 5-year basis. I'd love to see it done more regularly than that, but at least on a 5-year basis, what the risks are to our critical infrastructure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Romney. If there's no further debate on the Paul Amendment 1 amendment, the question's on its adoption. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, nay.
No.
The majority of members having voted in the negative, the nays have it. The amendment is not agreed to. The Paul Amendment number 1 is not adopted. If there's no further debate or amendment, the question's on final passage of S 824. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
No by proxy. Or excuse me, aye by proxy. Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan.
Aye.
Senator Sinema. Aye. Senator Rosen. Aye. Senator Padilla. Aye. Senator Ossoff. Aye. Senator Blumenthal. Aye. Senator Paul.
No.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Aye. Senator Romney. Aye. Senator Scott. Aye. Senator Hawley. Aye. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 11, the nays are 1. On the vote by proxy, and for the record only, the yeas are 3, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 11, the nays are 1, and the motion is agreed to.
We will proceed to consideration of S 884. Does any member wish to offer an amendment? Seeing no amendments are being offered and there's no further debate, the question's on final passage of S 884. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan.
Aye.
Senator Sinema. Aye. Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Aye. Senator Ossoff. Aye. Senator Blumenthal. Aye. Senator Paul.
No.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Aye. Senator Romney. Aye. Senator Scott. Aye. Senator Hawley. Aye. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 11, the nays are 1. On the vote by proxy, and for the record only, the yeas are 3, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 11, the nays are 1, and the motion is agreed to.
We'll now proceed to consideration of S 932. If there's no further debate, the questions on final passage of S.
Mr. Chairman, could I be added as a co-sponsor to S 932?
Absolutely. Senator Hawley will be added as a co-sponsor to S 932. The clerk will now call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan.
Aye.
Senator Sinema.
Aye.
Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul.
Aye.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Lankford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0. On this vote by proxy, on the vote by proxy, for the record, only the yeas are 3, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
We'll proceed to consideration of S 933. If there's no further debate, questions on final passage of S 933, the clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan.
Aye.
Senator Sinema.
Aye.
Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul. Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Lankford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0. On the vote by proxy and for the record only, the yeas are 3, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
We'll now proceed to consideration of S 479. Does any member wish to offer an amendment? Senator Padilla, you're recognized for an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer an amendment that incorporates technical assistance from FEMA to clarify that we are not giving FEMA any new authority, but instead just clarifying guidance around pre-deployment of assets being eligible for fire management assistance grants.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Paul.
A second-degree amendment. The bill is writing into law the current practice of the 75% cost share for fire disaster assistance and creates a new ability to increase the cost share at times. I don't have a problem with the concept, but I do have a problem with making these changes permanent. I propose adding a sunset so we can review how the changes go, but we haven't come to an agreement on that. I've also asked that we do a GAO report to understand whether or not there is any effectiveness to the changes.
Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do believe we have bipartisan support for my amendment and the overall bill. Respectfully request a no vote on the second-degree amendment.
If there's no further debate on the Paul second-degree amendment to the Padilla amendment, the questions on his adoption, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Nay.
No.
Majority of members having voted in the negative, the nays have it. The amendment, the second-degree Paul amendment is not agreed to. The question now is on the adoption of the Padilla amendment number 1. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Opposed will say nay. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it. The Padilla amendment number 1 is adopted and agreed to. We'll now proceed to consideration of S 794.
We need final passage.
Oh, you want a final passage? Sure. Senator Padilla wants it. If there's no further debate or amendment, the question is on final passage of S 479 as modified by Padilla Amendment number 1. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan.
Aye.
Senator Sinema.
Aye.
Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul.
No.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Lankford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 11, the nays are 1. On the vote by proxy, and for the record, only the yeas are 3, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 11, the nays are 1, and the motion is agreed to.
We will now proceed to consideration of S 794. Does any member wish to offer an amendment? If There's no further debate or amendment. The questions on final passage of S 794. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan.
Aye.
Senator Sinema.
Aye.
Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla.
No.
Senator Ossoff.
794.
Senator Blumenthal. Senator.
What bill is 794?
It's customs trade part. It's at the end of our list.
Okay, I got it. It was just out of order. I got it.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Senator Padilla.
Just recognize we went a little bit out of order, so may change my vote from no to an aye
Yes.
on 794.
Senator Paul.
No.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 11, the nays are 1. On the vote by proxy, and for the record, only yeas are 3, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 11, the nays are 1, and the motion is agreed to.
We will now proceed to consideration of S 780. And just if I make initial comments here, I share Ranking Member Paul's interest in making sure that Congress does not pass legislation that unnecessarily duplicates existing programs. And I am committed to working on this legislation with Ranking. I have heard from a number of my colleagues on other committees, however, who have concerns with this bill as currently drafted, who believe it's overbroad and could face implementation challenges. I do support passing this bill out of committee, though today, as a show of good faith that we intend to continue to work with the ranking member. I would like the record to reflect that this legislation will need changes to get support needed to pass the full Senate, but I look forward to working with Ranking Member Paul and find a path here, and that hope that Ranking Member Paul will do the same and would encourage an aye voice vote. Any other, Senator Paul?
This bill will require that the Government Accountability Office analyze legislation reported by any congressional committee and provide a report to Congress whether the legislation would create a duplicative program, office, or initiative. Over the past 12 years, GAO has documented more than 1,100 cases of duplicative programs. I think this would be a welcome reform.
If there's no further debate on the bill, the question is on final passage of S
Mr. Chair.
780. I'm
Just
sorry?
Before we vote,
Senator Padilla.
for the concerns you expressed and others, I'll be a no vote on this.
Very good. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it. Senator Padilla will be recognized as a no vote.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Sinema.
might I suggest that many of these bills, it turns out we're all voting yes on in roll call. Could we consider doing voice votes on ones where we agree, where everyone agrees, and then perhaps consider a voice vote while recording a no vote on ones where there may be one or two folks who oppose? That way we still have a record exactly of who voted yes and who voted no, but then don't face the kind of challenges down the road around whether or not everyone had their voice heard. Is that something that we might be able to consider?
I'm sorry, Senator Sinema, I would love to consider that, but we had detailed conversations with the parliamentarian, and the parliamentarian said there's no way to know exactly who is here,
Okay.
even though it's on video and other ways to know, that you need to actually have a record roll call, or anyone could object later, and then the bill stalls as a result of that. So,
All right. Thank you.
We
Thanks,
do
Mr.
need
Chair.
to have record roll calls for this to happen. It happens very infrequently, but it does happen, as we know.
Thank you.
We'll-
Perhaps we could figure out a way to make it work better in the future. But it is working better today than it has been in the past, so I'm happy about that.
We are on a
Thank you.
roll. We are on a roll. So to speak. So to speak. We will proceed to the consideration of S 108. If no further debate, the questions on final passage of S 108, the clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan.
Aye.
Senator Sinema.
Aye.
Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul.
Aye.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0. On the vote by proxy, and for the record, only the yeas are 3, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 12, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
We will now proceed to consideration of S111. Is there any further debate? Seeing none, the questions on final passage of S111, the clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan.
Aye.
Senator Sinema.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul.
Aye.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 11, the nays are 0. On the vote by proxy, and for the record, only the yeas are 4, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 11, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
We will now proceed to consideration of S349. Does any member wish to offer an amendment?
Yes, I have Paul Amendment 1.
Senator Paul, you're recognized for Paul Amendment 1.
This amendment would add a GAO report in order to understand whether the program's working, who's using it, whether it's effective.
Is there any further debate? Senator Langford.
Can I ask clarifying, does this also include the appropriations language on as well, or just the GAO report?
Just the GAO report.
Yeah. Yeah, the GAO, I'm fine with having the GAO report. My concern on the appropriations language is that obviously there are salaries involved of these military spouses, and the fear was the appropriations language would not allow them to get paid. That's usually a problem for most families. Yeah. So I have no issue with the GAO report, though. I want it to be effective. So, yeah.
So what is the,
This is the second degree to Paul 1.
Because Paul 1 had the no new funds, and we removed that.
So the second degree.
So Senator Paul, you're recognized for a second degree amendment?
The second degree amendment is the report only and excludes the language on using such sums as are available. What's that?
Unanimous.
That's up to him to decide.
There's no further debate on the Paul second degree amendment to the Paul Amendment number 1. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The Paul second degree amendment is adopted. We now need a vote on the first degree, or the Paul Amendment number 1 as modified by the Paul second degree amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The Paul Amendment number 1 as modified by the Paul second degree amendment is adopted. Without further debate, the question's now on final passage of S349. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan.
aye.
Senator Sinema.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul.
Aye.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye. And just to reaffirm, this vote was on final passage of S349 as amended by the Paul Amendment number 1 as substituted by the Paul substitute.
On the vote of those present, the yeas are 11, the nays are 0. On the vote by proxy, and for the record only, the yeas are 4, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 11, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
We will now proceed to consideration of S243. Is there further debate or amendment? Seeing none, the question is on final passage of S243. The clerk will call the roll. S243.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan.
Aye.
Senator Sinema.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul. Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 11, the nays are 0. On the vote by proxy, and for the record only, the yeas are 4, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 11, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
We'll now proceed to consideration of S 310. Does any member wish to offer an amendment? There's no amendment. If there's no further debate, the question will be on final passage of S 310. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan. Senator Sinema.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul.
Aye.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 11, the nays are 0. On the vote by proxy, and for the record only, the yeas are 4, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 11, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
We'll now proceed to consideration of S 250.
Could we the remaining ones in block, or does that not work? Well, as long as we all vote unanimous, yeah.
Well, I think that we're still worried about the parliamentarians rule, whether or not it applies. I'm a no on the next one.
Okay,
No, yes on the other
we'll
two.
need a roll call. So we'll proceed to consideration of S 257. No further debate. The questions on final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan. Senator Sinema.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul.
No.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 10, the nays are 1. On the vote by proxy, and for the record only, the yeas are 4, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 10, the nays are 1, and the motion is agreed to.
Proceed to consideration of S 206. If no further debate, the questions on final passage of S 206. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan. Senator Sinema.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul.
Aye.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 11, the nays are 0. On the vote by proxy, and for the record only, the yeas are 4, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 11, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
Two more. Proceed to consideration of S 679. No further debate. Questions on final passage of S 679. Clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan. Senator Sinema.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul.
Aye.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 11, the nays are 0. On the vote by proxy, and for the record only, the yeas are 4, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 11, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
Before we take the last vote, we have a little bit of cleanup here. We need to have a unanimous consent, and I would ask for unanimous consent that Paul number 2 to S 349 be a strike and replace instead of inserting the text. which was Senator Paul's intent. Without objections, so agreed. We will now proceed to consideration of S. 829. If there's no further debate, the questions on final passage of S. 829, the clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hassan. Senator Sinema.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Rosen. Senator Padilla. Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal. Senator Paul.
Aye.
Senator Johnson.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Senator Marshall.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 11, the nays are 0. On the vote by proxy, and for the record only, the yeas are 4, the nays are 0. On this vote, the yeas are 11, the nays are 0, and the motion is agreed to.
Senator Rosen, you recognize.
Thank you, Chairman Peters and Ranking Member Paul, for holding today's markup. I am glad that the committee has passed my bipartisan No Corruption Act with Senator Scott. No member of Congress who's been convicted of a felony related to their time in office should receive a pension from the American taxpayer. Our bipartisan bill will safeguard taxpayer dollars by closing a loophole that allows corrupt officials to continue collecting government pensions. I'm also happy to see the committee pass my bipartisan Federal Data Center Enhancement Act, which I introduced with Senator Cornyn, and Chairman Peters. With the increasing threat of cyber attacks and natural disasters, we must ensure the integrity of our nation's critical information by protecting data centers. Our bipartisan bill will enact a new set of security and resiliency standards to help keep our data safe, which is important both to our personal security and our national security. I look forward to passing these bipartisan bills through the Senate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to take a moment for the record to explain a no vote on S211 earlier in the agenda. It's a well-intentioned bill. I support in concept to authorize GSA to establish enhanced use lease pilot programs. In some of the details, particularly in the Johnson Amendment, there is language now that prohibits GSA from entering into leases with entities for a number of reasons, including those entities who receive a federal grant or contract still in a performance period. I know this is a tool that's very popular amongst a number of departments and agencies, including DOD, the VA. NASA in particular has facilities in California that could potentially be detrimentally impacted by this. So look forward to working with you to address these as this measure moves to the floor. But given those concerns and the potential impact for critical work being done in California, I'm a no vote for the time being. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. This business meeting is now adjourned.